Many of the secondary lines of British Rail were constructed as single lines. Since trains run over these lines in both directions, a very strict procedure must be used if the possibility of head-on collision is to be avoided. The simplest system is to have a train staff, a piece of metal on which the details of the section are engraved. No driver may enter the single line section unless in possession of the train staff. This system is not very flexible, however. Train cancellation or out-of-course running will soon result in the train staff being at the wrong end of the section. The solution to flexibility in the operation of single lines came with the development of the tyres electric token instrument. In this system, the signal box at each end of the single line has a stock of tokens which, like the train staff, are all stamped with the details of the section to which they apply. The instruments at each signal box are arranged and interlocked in such a way that only one token can ever be released at any time. The release of a token requires the cooperation of both signalmen. Let's have a look at the sequence of events as a train is signalled onto a single line worked by electric token block. The signalman offers the train to the signal box ahead in the normal way. The signalman at this box, when accepting the train, holds the bell plunger in on the last beat, thus electrically releasing the token at the offering box. The signalman in rear is now able to clear the section signal for the train to proceed onto the single line. The token is given to the driver, who must check that it is the correct token for the section concerned before proceeding. On arrival at the signal box in advance, the driver gives up the token to the signalman. He replaces the token in the electric token block instrument and gives the train out of section bell signal to the box in the rear. The procedure we have just looked at involves the issue of the token to the driver by the signalman directly. However, on certain lines operated at minimum staffing levels, a system of no signalman key token is employed. The same principle applies. The driver may not enter the single line section unless in possession of the correct token. In this case, however, the driver obtains the token himself from a no signalman key token instrument housed in a secure location at the passing place. Authority to withdraw the token is obtained by telephoning the signalman at the controlling signal box, and, of course, a token cannot be withdrawn if a token for this section is already out. The signalman at the controlling signal box controls and monitors the occupation of the single line sections.
Right, proceed to the dialogue when you're ready, driver.
In this arrangement, there is no section signal giving authority to proceed. Instead, we have a stop board instructing the driver that he must not proceed unless in possession of the token and permission from the controlling signalman. This stop board, therefore, acts as the section signal. The approach to each token exchange point is marked by a fixed distance signal of the reflectorized board type, and the subsequent hydropneumatic self-detecting facing points giving access to the left-hand passing loop, are protected by a point-set indicator displaying two white lights when this connection is set and locked. If the two white light indication is not illuminated, the driver must stop at the signal. The trainman must then pump the points by means of the handle provided in the adjacent cabinet. In every case where these points have been pumped, they must then be clipped and locked. Once the train has passed clear of the facing connection into the passing loop, the driver will find a board marking the end of the single line section, and authority to proceed into the platform line if clear. Any connections into yards or sidings will be operated from ground frames. A facing point lock secures the connection in the normal position, and the token is necessary to unlock this lever. Should a driver experience a failure of the telephone when requesting authority to withdraw a token, he will find an alternative emergency telephone for this purpose in the vicinity of the token exchange point. Where a single line is connected at one end only, in other words, a single branch line of one section, a basic block system is employed known as one train working. Quite simply, only one train is ever permitted to enter the branch. Authority to the driver to enter the single line may be simply the possession of the train staff, called one train working with train staff, or by the clearance of the section signal only, called one train working without train staff. In the latter system, the occupation of the single line is indicated in the signal box, and interlocking prevents clearance of the section signal while any part of the section is occupied. We have already seen how, in electric token block, the cooperation of both signalmen was necessary to permit a token to be withdrawn from an instrument. If this cooperative action is interlocked with the section signals at each end of the single line, whereby only one section signal may be cleared for a train to proceed in the predetermined direction, and this section signal may only be cleared for one movement, it is possible to dispense with the token, making clearance of the section signal the sole authority for the driver to occupy the single line. This system is known as tokenless block. With the introduction of radio communication between train drivers and signalmen, it has been possible to develop a new form of signalling for remote rural single lines, the radio-electronic token block. Utilizing computer technology and solid-state interlocking, this system enables one signalling center to control many miles of single-line railway, divided into a number of sections by passing loops. Instead of the traditional metal token, an electronic token or telegram is transmitted via the radio to a data display in the driving cab. Let's have a look at how the radio electronic token block works. This train has arrived within the passing loop at a place called Speen Bridge. The driver pulls up to the stop board, which acts as the section signal for the single line ahead. He now calls the signalman by radio, giving his train reporting number and description. He must then state the train radio number. He advises the signalman of his location and requests the token for the single line section ahead. If he is in a position to issue the requested token, the signalman will tell the driver to depress his receive button. The electronic token, or telegram, will then appear as text in the data display. It will give details of the commencement and termination of the section. The driver now confirms receipt of the token and requests permission to proceed. Once permission is granted, he may pass the stop board and enter the single line.
Welcome Pt2 proceed from Speen Bridge to the up stop board at Roy Bridge. Token must be returned at the up stop board at Roy Bridge, over.
Welcome Pt2 Roger, out.
However, the driver must now look out for the station limits board. And, once the whole train has passed this board, call the signalman and advise him. This most important action enables the signalman to issue a token in the rear section for a following train if necessary. On arrival at the next stop board, the driver calls the signalman, giving his location and radio number, and an assurance that the train has arrived complete within the station limits board. The signalman will now ask the driver to depress his send button. The text will disappear from the data display. The token has now been returned to the signalling centre.
Roger, press and hold send, over.
Oh, there. Aye. Very good. Aye. Right here. Aye.
The facing connections into passing loops on radio electronic token lines are of the hydropneumatic type with point set indicators displaying a single yellow aspect when the connection is set for the passing loop. These may be negotiated in the trailing direction and will automatically reset and relock once the train is clear. In the facing direction, no train may proceed beyond the point set indicator unless the yellow aspect is illuminated. The approach to each passing place is marked by a reflectorized type board distance signal, a braking distance in the rear. The final system of signalling which we shall examine is known as the permissive block. This system, which is never used for passenger trains, permits more than one train to enter the section. The entrance to the section is usually controlled by a miniature semaphore arm, and when this signal is cleared, the driver may proceed into the section at caution, being prepared to stop short of the rear of a preceding train. There has always been a vital need for communication between train drivers and signalmen. Sometimes, for example, in absolute block areas, it is necessary for a member of the train crew to go on foot to the signal box to remind the signalman of the presence of the train. The use of the trainman's call plunger, denoted on the signal post by the distinctive squashed D indicator, provided a fairly basic means of alerting the signalman. It simply rang a bell in the signal box. The signal post telephone was an obvious next step. It not only provided the means of alerting the signalman to the presence of the train, it enabled instructions to be transmitted. The coming of radio communications between train drivers and signalmen on certain lines has revolutionized operations. It is expected that such communications will soon be extended to cover the entire system. British Rail currently uses two different radio systems. The first, a driver-to-shore system known as Band 3, is applied to long-distance passenger and freight operations. The second, a driver-to-signalman system, has been developed exclusively for lines where passenger trains are operated by driver only. In both of these systems, communication is discrete. That is to say, it cannot be heard by drivers of other trains using the same radio channel. However, on both systems, the signalman may send out a general emergency call to all drivers. Various forms of level crossing are in use on British Rail, and these fall into two basic groups. Those that are controlled from a signal box and are protected by fixed signals, and those that are automatic in operation, being controlled by the passage of trains. Let's have a look at the first group. Controlled level crossings are directly operated from a signal box, crossing box or ground frame situated immediately adjacent to the crossing. They may be of the old-fashioned swing gate type, or they may have the full lifting barriers with associated flashing road traffic signals. As we have said, this type of level crossing is protected by fixed signals, although some swing gate types on little used branch lines are protected only by distant signals, the gates themselves acting as the stop signal. Where a crossing is controlled remotely from a signal box that might be some miles away, a system of closed-circuit television is employed. Cameras mounted above the crossing transmit pictures to the controlling signal box, enabling the signalman to observe the crossing in the same way as if he were immediately adjacent to it. This type of level crossing, known as CCTV, is protected by fixed signals. Now let's look at the second group, those controlled by the passage of trains. The most common of these is the automatic half-barrier type, or AHB. In this type of crossing, the approaching train actuates track circuits and treadles, causing the road traffic lights to flash, bells or warblers to sound, and the barriers to lower. When the train has cleared the crossing, the barriers will again raise, unless a train is approaching in the opposite direction. This type of level crossing is not protected by fixed signals and will only operate when a train is approaching in the right direction for the running line concerned. Another form of crossing in the second group is the automatic open level crossing. This type operates in much the same way as an automatic half barrier, but has no barriers. However, as far as train drivers are concerned, there are some important differences. The approach to an automatic open crossing is marked by a black St. George's cross on a reflective board. This indication is followed by a second consisting of a black St. Andrew's cross, below which is a figure advising the maximum speed at which the crossing may be traversed. Finally, at the immediate approach to the crossing, there is a white light mounted at driver's eye level. This white light is normally out. Only when the flashing road traffic signals and audible warning sequence is established will this white light flash synchronously. The driver must not proceed across the automatic open crossing until he observes the white light to be flashing. In future, automatic open crossings will also be provided with a red flashing light at driver's eye level, which will operate whenever the flashing white light is extinguished. A type of level crossing found where very minor public roads or farm roads cross the railway is the type having miniature red and green warning lights provided for the road traffic. These miniature warning lights simply give indication of the approach of a train. The operation of the crossing is solely in the hands of the public. Finally, a type of level crossing found where highways cross little-used freight lines is the trainman-operated crossing. In this type of crossing, a member of the train crew closes the gates or barriers, authorizes the driver to draw forward clear of the crossing, then re-secures the gates or barriers in the open position. So far, we have looked at the various forms of fixed signalling used by British Rail. Where a signal is defective or cannot otherwise be cleared, a hand signalman may be positioned at the signal to relay the instructions of the signalman. He will exhibit to the driver of an approaching train a red flag by day or a red hand lamp by night.
Morning, driver. Got a track failure. I'll just get on the signal and see what's happening. Hello, signalman. Hand signal on T29. Got a train standing.
When the signalman's authority to proceed has been obtained by telephone, the hand signalman will verbally instruct the driver, then exhibit a yellow flag by day or a yellow lamp by night. The driver will give one long blast on the horn, observe the instructions given to him, approach cautiously any points which are facing or any switch diamonds or swing-nosed crossing, ensuring these are in the correct position, and not exceeding 15 miles per hour passing over them. He must proceed at such reduced speed as will enable him to stop short of any train or obstruction on the line.